Let's do it.
let's let's roll with it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a glorious second version of the first version that we're doing today. And without further ado, we're just going to jump right into it. Cecil, how are you, sir?
Doing pretty good, man. How you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty good. Now, we started the last version of this version by thanking women for everything that they have done for us. So we will re-thank them and point back to the last few minutes ago. Um,
Yeah.
but why don't you start with introducing yourself?
Sure. So my name's Cecil Phillip. Right now I'm a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft. What that really means is I spend a lot of time with, students, startups, students and startups, different folks in the community, just trying to make sure you have a really good experience building applications inside of Microsoft Azure. So, we do a lot of workshops, a lot of tutorials, write a lot of documentation, and also, share feedback back and forth between the community and the product team. Again, all just to make sure that, the experience for developers in Azure is pretty good quality.
Amen. So I feel a little bit like deja vu since we started having this conversation.
Yeah, we're just
So
repeating the conversation again.
that's right, and probably not doing it anywhere near what we were before. Um, so you came. You're not native to the United States. You came over to go to college, and as to use your words, you forgot to leave. So let's talk a little bit about kind of your career upbringing and what kind of led you to where you are today.
Sure. So I was born and raised in the island of Antigua. That's a little tiny island in the Caribbean. 108 square miles, 365 beaches, and probably smaller than most cities in the United States, I can
Wow.
imagine.
About
But
how many people?
wow, I think the last time that I checked the numbers, there was something like 75,000
Okay. Okay.
people. Probably a lot more than that now, but yeah,
Crowded
it's
beaches.
yeah, it's a pretty small place. But growing up, my dad got us a computer. He got us it was like a Windows 95. I remember it was the first one. It was a compact Presario, Windows
Okay.
95 machine.
Okay.
And those days, like computers used to come with books, right? So
Yep.
you buy a computer and you got like these big stack of books with them. And so I started reading this one book, and it was like, oh, here's intro to HTML type thing, whatever.
Sure.
So I started reading this book, and I might have been 13, 14 or something like that. Never had a computer before, mind you. And so I wrote this web page, and I put my name on the screen.
Yep.
And so for me, like talking to most people today, that's not that interesting. For me at 13 and never
Yeah.
having my own computer before, like that was amazing. That was like the
Sure.
best thing I've ever done in my life. So I'm like calling people on the phone, like, yo, you need to come over. You need to see what I just did to the computer. And so ever since that point, like I've just really just been, super excited about it, about web development and just kind of seeing where we can go. So, I left Antigua in 2000. No. Left Antigua I left Antigua in 2001. Came up for college and, got my degrees in computer science, software engineering, and I've just been here ever since.
What did you? I mean, was that like the pivotal moment for you to like? Well, it sounds kind of cliche, but how did that lead to computer science?
So I think at that point I realized like I wanted to do like computing, right? I needed to do something in that space for a
Sure.
living.
Okay.
And what's funny, I actually decided when I left home that I wanted to fix computers. Like
Okay.
that's what I originally wanted to do. So I wanted
Okay.
to, I was gonna go to school. I was gonna come back home. I was gonna, play with hard drives and RAMs and
Sure.
things of that nature. I was gonna have my own Cecil's computer shop type thing. And I think regardless of whatever field you're in, I think once you go out of, I guess, your comfort zone or where you usually are, and you kind of get to see different perspectives of things,
Sure.
your mind definitely opens up a little bit. So, I came to college and then I'm like, oh, you mean I could work for Microsoft? Oh, I could work for Google and I could write code. And, I didn't know that you could do some of these types of things.
Sure.
Or, I mean, maybe you might have, like, sure, somebody does it and you know that people can achieve these things, but you never thought that you could do it yourself.
Sure.
Until, you're around that environment, you're around that atmosphere.
Sure.
And so, throughout school, like my ideas of what's possible just kind of kept evolving and changing. And then one day, randomly I picked up a C# book. really don't know what caused me to do that. It was just it was totally random. Because we did Java and C++ and a little bit of assembly in college.
Sure.
It was like it was C# 1.1 or something like that. Picked up a book.
Sure.
Actually, it's a book by Jesse Liberty. I remember. It's a Jesse Liberty book. Picked it up, and I taught myself C#. And I've just kind of stuck with it ever since. And so when I left college now, the first job that I got just happens to be an ASP.NET web forum / .NET job.
Yep.
So obviously leaving college now, I knew nothing about ASP.NET at all. So I spent maybe like the first 3 months of my job reading a book.
Sure.
Obviously I was going to meetings and, being involved in discussions and things of that nature, but I literally know nothing about it. I was just reading a book for like 3 months.
Sure. So fast forward to today. I mean, have you ever had notions of kind of going back home and influencing the industry back at home?
I mean, I talk about it all the time, and I have a lot of friends, a lot of colleagues from the Caribbean too.
Sure.
That that they're in the field, and we have those similar ideas. We'll see what happens later this year. There's some projects that we're working on that may or may not turn into something.
Sure.
But I have, for instance, a lot of friends right now. Like they go back and they speak at different conferences, they speak at universities and things of that nature, just to kind of give people that idea of what's possible.
Sure.
So I think that's the first step, right? Like you have to let people know this is what we could possibly do, and then once you let them know, then you can start giving them the tools to do that. And I think we're in a great time too because with the advent of open source, a lot of the things that IDEs and compilers and all these things are free, right? Like I don't have to pay for them. I don't have to, a lot of information. We don't even really need to go and get books anymore, right? Like we could just go online and watch videos, YouTube. There's a lot of content that you can just readily just go and get to learn. So I think definitely want to do some more down there. Just in terms of like educating the community, educating like different islands and things of that nature about what the potential of computing could be for the culture.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to think that it could have just a vast impact on everything that happens. I mean, just you think of the recent events of the hurricanes that had gone through and the communications that could be there, not there. I mean, devastating, but with that comes opportunity. How do you think about inspiring the other people to see what's available or create exposure? I mean,
Sure.
And I say that because we do that conference for the mere purpose of creating exposure to everything that everybody does. That's why you and I are talking today. And so it's near and dear to my heart and obviously near and dear to you. So I'm curious how you think of that, like, and how you project that to others.
Sure. So I like to take a show and prove type model kind of thing.
Sure.
It's kind of like you're not gonna go to the gym and take advice from somebody that doesn't work out. You know what I mean? Then you got to kind of be like, I don't know if I want to take that advice, right? In my past, I've had the opportunity to teach a few courses. I've taught courses at Miami-Dade College and some other places. And, what I always try to do is the advice that I'd give my students from a career perspective, like I try to be as much as I can an example of that, right? So when I tell them, go out and find something that you care about and see how you could mold that or add technology to that to kind of enhance that experience. You know what I mean? So I don't want to just tell them that I want to do it.
Yep.
When I tell them, hey, you need to go out to user groups and, I think you should go out and, create demos and get a blog and put things on GitHub. Like, I don't just want to talk about it. Like, I want to do it. And so, everything that, I've kind of been trying to project or show people, these are the things that I'm doing and this is how it's helped me. I'm telling you because I know that it works. Right. And so it's going to be a very similar model, right? Like, I want to be able to go to the Caribbean and be like, I did this, I did this, I did this. And look, now I'm working at Microsoft, and now I have the ability to travel the world and educate and talk to different people.
Sure.
And there's nothing that I'm doing that's extra special that you can't do. Like, it's something that's very achievable by everybody else.
Yeah.
And so, I want to let them see, like, this is where, this is an achievable goal for you. And even with me, like as I goes, like I keep setting my bars a little bit higher.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think, once you become a programmer, like you're stuck behind a desk and you're typing all day and you're really not doing anything but typing. But there's so many different things that we could do inside of this field. And so, being able to consistently evolve and change and grow as the industry grows and learn and create new experiences. If you could show people what's possible, then they'd be like, okay, I believe you. I trust you. I see you've done it.
Yep.
And now we can have like a blueprint, right? Like all of us, we can be our own blueprints, right?
Yep.
You know what I mean? To kind of help each other move forward.
Yeah, I always tell people, computers are here to do dumb stuff so we can do really important stuff. And if you're just sitting back there doing this mundane thing over and over again, and you're failing, like let's move on to what makes us super powerful and let the computers do all the dumb stuff. And it's a bit of a hump for people to get over. I mean,
yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say we're here to solve problems. Like as a developer, we're here to solve problems and enable one another. That's it.
Sure. I mean, I think a lot about so every time a new service comes out or we have some like new evolution in technology, people are like, oh my God, like you're putting all these people out of jobs, out of out of work, whatever the case is. And so I kind of like what you said. The way I think about it is, let's take these these repeatable tasks, right? And let's automate that. Like let's let a machine do it, or let's let something else do it. But you know what? Like that still opens up the opportunity for us to do so much more. So, okay, yeah, you might not need to go to the printer and send this fax and whatever the case is, we just send it by email. But you know what? You can think about more interesting ways that you could use those advancements in communication and in data storage and cloud computing and some of these types of things to create more interesting businesses or more interesting opportunities for yourself, for your family, for your community.
Yeah, very much. What are some techniques that you use to get people inspired?
So I think depending on who you talk to, like you have to frame your conversation to their context.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So obviously if you talk about students, what are some of the things that you knew that students do? Sure. Right? Like obviously they study, but they go out, they like to party. Yep. They're probably really into IoT and video games and some of those types of things. So let's create demos and scenarios around those type of things that they'll be interested in hearing about. Obviously if I go to a group of students that I'm talking about 401ks and retirements and investment accounts, maybe the business students, right? But most people are going to be like, that's pretty boring. I don't really care about it. Yeah. Just in the same way where, I could go and speak to an older group of folks. And, if you talk to them about social media and YouTube and Twitter, like they're probably not going to care as much, right? Because that's not their space. That's not how they grew up consuming information.
Totally.
And I think that's what's the important thing, right? Is trying to understand, based on who you're talking to, like what's the best way for you to consume and absorb that information? You know what I mean? Or are you somebody that's into video, or are you into, somebody, live in front of in-person type engagements, or do you just want to read a book or a blog post or whatever? Or maybe you're just the type of person that I'll just give you a project, I'll give you the code and you'll figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
So kind of just based on who the demographic is, who the people are, we have to have different ways of approaching that. And that has nothing to do with computer science, but that's just learning models, right?
Yeah.
Like we all learn very differently. We all, approach, gathering information and keeping that information very differently. Yeah. So we just have to have, different ways that we could, make sure that everybody has a little bit of something that they can hold on to.
Sure. What inspires you?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. What inspires me? I think for me, that changes over time. I think right now, particularly with the role that I'm in, what's really inspiring for me is to see other people achieve their goals. But it's actually kind of funny when you think about it. So people often ask me, what is your career goal? Of what makes you sleep better at night?
Sure.
And, I've never been I need to be the person that the boss is always talking about type person. I don't need to be front and center and get the spotlight. But if you tell me, you came to one of my sessions or you did one of my demos or whatever the case is, and you got it and you understood it and it helped you solve whatever problem that you happen to be having at that time, Like that for me is like the best feeling in the world. Like then like, I'm like, okay, I'm great. I'm done. Brush my shoulders off and I'm going to go have a drink or something.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because we did something good today.
Yeah. Yeah. I very much feel that energy as well.
Yeah.
And it's fun. How do you, I know you have your own podcast, and you're very active in the community. How do you kind of keep up with the train of information? I mean, there's a lot of stuff to sift through. And so anybody kind of coming into this world, depending on whether, it's the web world or it's whatever, like there's a new framework a day, there's new languages, like how do you break that down for folks to say, look, calm down, let's pick something and go make awesome?
So the way that I've always approached this, because again, like this is never going to change, right? Like technology is always going to be like skyrocketing in whatever direction it's going in. The way that I've always approached it is, I pick the things that I care about. And when I say care about, like, so I'm really focused on web applications, web applications, web APIs, ASP.NET. So usually anything that's around that space, like I pay a lot of attention to. Like I go out of my way, I make time to play with it, to read about it, to watch videos about it, and like that's what my core competency is. Okay. And like those are the skills that I want to continue to build, right? So that gets the majority of my focus. But then you're always going to run into like those things that you should know about, but you don't have to know about. You know what I mean? Sure. Like I could know about it. I don't need to know how it works on a byte level, but I could know what it does, and I could speak about it intelligently. Yep. So I could give you two examples of those things. So blockchain is a really huge thing in the industry today. Like a lot of people are talking about it. And even machine learning, a lot of people are talking about, those types of things. I couldn't tell you the details of a machine learning algorithm. Like I couldn't, right? There's a lot of smart folks that spent years and years studying it and perfecting those things. I couldn't talk to you about it, but I understand the benefit of it, and I understand what it's used for. I understand where I could apply it to my use case, right? So again, my use case is web applications. How can we find a way to apply machine learning to web applications? Sure. Right. And so you think about things like, recognizing, people and things inside of pictures. Like, oh, okay, that might be something that's interesting, right? Yep. You think about something like creating recommendation engines. Like I have a product catalog. Like what product do I want to recommend to you next? That's another interesting, approach to it. Yeah. But like, I'm probably never going to be the person that actually built the algorithm, but I'm definitely could be on the side of the person that consumes it. You know what I mean? So again, it's one of those things like you kind of have to pick your level, right? That you want to be in certain things. You know what I mean? Like, so yep. I want to be a really good web API, ASP.NET developer. I want to be really good at Azure. I want to be able to talk to you about .NET Core and those types of things. When you ask me about machine learning, like I want to be able to have a conversation with you about it, but I might not know everything that you know. Sure. And I think, when you have those types of, when you have people that are around you that have that type of focus, I think it really makes for really interesting teams now, right? Because imagine a dynamic team of, you got a web guy and you got a security guy and a database guy and what have you. Everybody knows a little bit about everything that's happening in that room. But like, I might not be able to tell you how to performance tune your Postgres database, just like you might not be able to talk to me about like designing, proper interface or proper contract for a web API. But we understand how they work and we understand like how they fit together. So it's really just about trying to understand like what do you really focus on doing right now? You know what I mean? And like, where do you want to contribute your value? And then, make sure you focus and hone those skills and work on those types of things. And then the other things could be like, hey, I'm on the couch and I'm, it's Sunday, I just want to, I'm going to pull out, whatever your favorite tech magazine or blog post happens to be. You read about it, you watch some videos. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That's cool. When you get in a room now, you can just continue to ask questions. Because I think that's what's important, right? Like, don't be afraid to ask questions. Because I'll very willingly admit like things that I don't know how to do. Yeah, that's. Right? I think that's important. I don't know how to do this, that, or the other, but I can help you with this thing. So now, the team can form in a way that everybody has their strengths, and we could just focus on, collaborating and communicating, but contribute value in the part that I know the most about.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it.
Are you frozen?
You're frozen.
What's going on here?
Look at that, live frozen. I know there's a number of people actually watching right now. Now I'm frozen. If you guys have questions, guys and girls have questions, drop them in the chat and we will talk about them. Assuming he comes back.
Oh, so sorry about that, man. Like you just
this is
talking
the
in your phones, and I was like, "What's going on?"
This is the agile podcast today. Oh no, you're frozen again. What is going on?
Yeah, did it cut out or is it still streaming? Like,
oh, there you go. No, you're back. Yeah, you cut out
Oh,
for a
okay.
second. Yeah, I kind of to pick up where we left off. Yeah, I think it's important to give yourself permission to explore. And I think it's important to be all right with not knowing because you're not going to. I think all too often in our industry, we get a little like bravado in us and it's like, yeah, I know it all. And it's like, come on. No, you don't. Because it changed yesterday. Like, and it's moving so fast. And it's almost, I mean, people can see the stacks of books that are behind me. Not that I can consume them. And there's, everybody's got this stack of information that's kind of coming. It's a lifetime of study, and you got to be all right with changing. All right, so we have a question. I'm gonna try to read this right. From teaching to advocating for Microsoft, you have met coders from many walks. Do you find people who have been coding from a childhood age tend to be the best coders in the industry, or have you come across persons who started coding late in life, say their 30s, who became well-known leaders in tech? What advice for improvement do you have for old coders? Ooh, I'm going to let you go first, and then I'm going to get on that too.
Sure, I'll talk about that for a little bit. So I'll give you a couple different stories. So I didn't start coding until I was like in my teenage years, right? Like, and I didn't seriously start coding until I was in college, right? Before it was just kind of like, let's throw some stuff together and see what happens in a browser kind of thing. But I've met tons of folks that they started coding when they were like 6, right? Or something crazy like that. And, when you hear those types of things, you always feel that, I guess, a little bit of intimidation. Like, oh, wow, this person has like 10 years coding experience over me. And all I can tell you is that, regardless of that, how much of that time that they may have had over you, yes or no, that doesn't, prevent you from adding value. You know what I mean? Because one of the things is going to be like, the way that they learn and the way that you learn is going to be very different.
Yep.
You know what I mean? The way that you pick up information, just like we were talking about a little bit earlier about learning models and how people are different. We all pick up information very differently. And then, the person that you are and the experiences that you have kind of define like the type of programmer you're going to be. It's kind of like so imagine like you're a writer or a painter or you're just an artistic person.
Yep.
Right? I can't paint to save my life, but you know what? Like the way that I hold the pen or the pencil or the paintbrush is very much unique to me. It's almost like a fingerprint, right? Like it's very unique to that individual person. And so, you could start at a later age, you know what I mean? And all that's going to happen is that all of those experiences that you've had in the past, they're going to come bubbling up to help you solve the problem. Because again, like programming is not about learning syntax, right? It's about solving the problem. And if you can be a good problem solver, whether you're like 6 or 16 or 60, that's just a core skill to have. You know what I mean? You could learn JavaScript or Java or Scala or whatever language comes out in the next 10 years. But like, yes, your experiences and all of those, all of those things that you've been through in life, is really what's more so important.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I totally agree. And to kind of double back on what you're saying, I think, I liken it sometimes to an art or another language. I mean, they are computer languages, but like learning Spanish or French or something, right? It's just a way to communicate with the device. And so the
Yeah,
programming aspect of it actually doesn't is somewhat irrelevant. If you can understand a few concepts, then becoming a programmer, now you're just speaking a different language that happens to be run by a computer. Now, I would say there's kind of different levels of programming. Like if you're the guy like creating the operating system and all that mathematical goo and that stuff down at the bottom of the stack, then sure, you're going to need more years and some fine-tuned things that I don't have, but I've been slinging code for 20 years and I didn't
yeah,
go to school. I wasn't going to be a programmer and that wasn't my thing until I got inspired that it could help me do um, do stuff better. And I think our kids today, like I have two kids, a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old, and I actually think that their perspective of the computer is drastically different than, say, my perspective of the computer. They've grown up with it.
sure.
They see it in a different light. My son, there's always been a touch screen. That's a weird place where, a CD drive is like a funny little artifact for him, right? That's not a thing. So their perspective on it's different than our perspective. And I think the two meld really well. So I think it's about passion. If you genuinely like to do something, then you'll be really good at it. And if you find that you like the art form of programming, then God bless. Why would, like you said earlier, it's free. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing. Get a computer and go do it. Like there's nothing stopping anybody from doing it.
Yeah, sure. Like I could even point out a story about one of my teammates right now. So her name's Ashley McNamara, and she was a professional photographer. And she used to sell like photography services to photographers, kind of thing.
Sure, sure.
And she never started coding until her 30s. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So think about it, right? Like not formally trained, doesn't have degrees of computer science or anything like that. But she was in a situation where she was like, hey, I have this business, I have this work that I'm doing, but I need to create like a web experience. So she's like, well, I'm just going to teach myself to do it, right?
yep,
And so, she went and she learned, obviously all the web things, CSS, HTML, JavaScript. She learned Python. And in doing that, she also went out into her community. So again, like she's going to meetups and conferences and she's talking to people. And so from that, like, and I can even share you some blog posts because she's written about this very extensally
sure.
online.
Yeah, we'll look it up.
Yeah, from those experiences, like her career has just skyrocketed. Now she's like a principal, advocate at Microsoft. So when you think about it, from going from I don't really know what this coding thing is to where she is today, it just shows you like it doesn't matter how old you are, as long as you care about it, right? And I think that's what's important at the end of the day because and one of the things I always tell my students too, like if you don't care about it, like you're not going to put in the effort.
That's right.
So let's say, I don't know, you're into cars or you're into comic books, write an app about managing your comic book collection or, write an app that, measures the performance of different cars or whatever the case is, right? Like just create something that you care about because now like the technology is just a tool, right? It's a tool to solve a problem around something that you care about. Because again, if you care about it, you get to do it anyway, regardless of whether you learn a program or not. So I think that's a good motivator and a good driver for you to just kind of continue to do things,
Yeah, and to hit on Marvin's question like, at the end, someone say life in their 30s, like that's young. I mean, the tech world 10 years ago was drastically different than it is today. I mean, the iPhone is just 10 years old. Like the entire landscape changed. If you're 30, if you're 40, even you're 50, you still got decades left of life to live and to go do stuff. Like that's plenty of time.
Yeah, definitely.
Even if you're 90, God bless you. If you're 90, grab a drink and celebrate and stop trying to work.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, you're just doing it for fun, right? Like now you're just kind of like,
You're probably making more money than you were before.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, we got another question. Currently, I'm a product
Sure.
designer, and I believe having a basic to mid-level understanding of coding is awesome for designers. I'm assuming that's visual designer, not clothing designer. I'm learning more front-end development, but I believe that there are some things I'm just not understanding. How do you learn more about the topic of coding? Coding is a mindset, and understanding how to logically set up products is something I believe I'm missing. Are there any books you'd recommend? Interesting. So
Sure.
I would say people. This is where, like, for me, I think engaging with the people, the community around you, and asking questions is where you get over that stuff.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And what I'm doing, I'm just looking up because there's a set of books that I generally like to read. Um, so here's what I'd say. So regardless of whether you're doing front end, back end, if you're building games, whatever the case, I learned that we all have like a core set of fundamentals, right? Um, and again, you don't have to necessarily go to school to get these things, but I think there's a
Yeah.
core set of things you need to be able to do. So when we talk about problem solving, right? Like how do you best break down your task, your feature, your problem into small digestible pieces,
Yep.
and then how can you reason about those pieces, right? So let's take a simple example of, let's say I'm building like an appointment scheduling app,
Yep.
right? So I have my context. So what are the pieces of that I need to break down, right? And so now, who am I building this app for, right? Like, so who's going to be doing the scheduling, right? So we have to think about those people. And then let's talk about security and storage and some of these types of things. And now in each of those different pieces, now you could dive down deeper and say, okay, well,
Yep.
how can I further break down this problem? Right. So let's talk about storage. Like, what kind of databases do I need to use? Am I doing like document databases? Am I doing graphs? Am I doing, relational type databases? And then when you kind of figure some of that stuff out, and again, this is going to be very specific to your context and how you're choosing to build your app. But when you kind of figure that stuff out, what you're going to notice is you're going to see a certain set of patterns that are going to kind of continue to evolve over and over and over again. And then all I would tell you to do is, more than likely you're seeing those patterns because those are patterns other people have also seen too at some point.
Yeah.
But I'm looking around here. There's some books I usually like. What I'll do, I'll put in the Facebook stream.
Yeah, we can
in the
link them
thing.
up below.
Yeah, I'll put some links to some books that I definitely recommend. But again, like outside of just raw coding, comfort, right? Like how comfortable am I with JavaScript or Angular or whatever the case is? You know, um, we need to know how do we work with data? How do we work with lists? How do we work with large lists of things?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then particularly when you're talking about web applications now, I mean, web applications technically are distributed systems, right? Like
Yep.
I'm going to have one or many of these types of things. So how does my application behave differently when I add another instance of it?
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then, there's other things that we talk about, like localization. Like how do I create an application that somebody that speaks another language could use?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So those I think are some of the core things that people should know, should really try and understand. Because again, like regardless of whether you're building a mobile app or a web app, like we could definitely take that knowledge like and kind of apply it across disciplines, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I think at times, you just have to learn with being all right, feeling it. It's all right to feel uncomfortable because
Yeah.
if you're not, then you're kind of not pushing yourself hard enough.
Yeah.
And the reality is, like, there's not a place where you'd like start to conquer something and then it's like, oh, I got it now. Like,
Yeah.
the next framework will come out, the next language will come out, the next architectural pattern. I mean, you were mentioning machine learning, right? That's a whole different mindset that is going to be incorporated into everyday life, and it's just going to happen, and we're all going to have to take a piece of that. And God, like you, like I know a piece of it, but I'm just all right with being kind of naive
Yeah.
to that world.
And you know what? I'll be honest with you. So I did so I went to school for computer science, and I've obviously long forgotten a lot of it. But what I'm noticing now too is, as certain things happen, that education that I had before, I'm starting to see it pop up in different aspects. So like we were just talking about data access a little while ago. So I'm more traditionally like a SQL Server type person, like so
Sure.
T-SQL, a little bit of document databases. But now graph databases are becoming something interesting,
Yep.
right? Like how do we inspect the connections, right, or the relationships between these types of your data, your entities or people, whatever it is you have in your database.
Yep.
But now that I'm looking at it, I remember doing graphs and trees and these types of things in my algorithms and data structures class.
Yep.
And so having that knowledge from before, I could kind of look at these things and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I kind of remember how this works, right? I might not necessarily know how that particular product works, but I understand the concept because I had that foundational pieces of, again, dictionaries and linked lists and, graph data structures and some of these types of things.
Yep.
So what I do now, again, even though I don't use them every day, I could easily go back up and pick up a book or a blog post or something like that. And how do I do tree traversals, or, how do I do the shortest path type problems?
Yeah.
And then those now would remind me, okay, well, this is how this thing works. I got it. So now when I look into something like, I don't know, Neo4j or Cosmos DB or whatever, I could be like, okay, my fundamental computer science knowledge tells me this is how this kind of works. I just need now to go figure out, like, how do I program it in this language and this framework?
Sure. Yeah, and there's a lot of educational things out there, either free or relatively cheap. So, I mean, even the colleges are giving away their courses to take online. I would say there's an overabundance of information, which sometimes can be difficult to consume, but it's certainly there to do it. And I would come back to the people thing, ask, get involved, go to a conference, talk about it. People are very willing to share for sure.
I'll be very honest with you. I think, so one story, one of my first jobs that I had, I got very bored, right? And so like when I started to feel that way, I needed somewhere to direct that energy. And what ended up happening was, again, like we said before, like I went out to user groups and I just started to talk to people. And, just that conversation alone was just so refreshing for me, because now, like, you have this feeling of, hey, I'm really stupid because I can't solve this problem.
Yeah.
But then you go out and talk to other people and you realize like half the country has the same problem.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm not that bad after all. Like everybody else has a similar problem. It might not be the same scenario because we're all working on different, products, but it's the same problem. You know what I mean? Whether it's performance or security or whatever the case is. And now, now you're in that group of like-minded people, so to speak. You can have that conversation about, well, this is how I kind of tried approaching this, and then you tell me how you try to approach it. And then, maybe the solution is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So I take a little bit of your idea, a little bit of mine, a little bit of this other person's idea. We kind of come up with something that's a little bit more different.
Yeah.
So, regardless of whether you have, I'm just saying that to say, regardless of whether you had like formal education or not, some of your best knowledge and information is going to come from collaboration.
Yep.
Because it's only at that point that you're really going to understand what you need, right? Because I would never tell you, hey, go out and read like this 1,000-page data structures book, right? Like for what? But I would tell you, hey, if you buy it, I mean, maybe you don't read it cover to cover, right? But like maybe you like, okay, I need to know about this particular topic. You flip to the chapter, you read 20, 30 pages, and you're like, okay, I got it. And then you go back to work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you get the information that you need to solve the problem that you have at that time.
Sure.
And then you know what? After you solve the problem, go talk about it, go write about it, go blog about it, go do a podcast about it, create a video about it. Because again, like talking about it and sharing that information just makes you better. It makes that information sink in.
Yes.
And then it also helps like the people around you.
Yeah.
Because now they're like, oh wow, like somebody else, it lets them know somebody else has a problem and they were able to solve it. Yeah. And you can find out some of the ways that they kind of went about, trying to deal with that scenario.
Sure. So let's talk approaching that other person. So I mean, we've talked about what's inspired us in learning whatnot. But sometimes when you feel like you're in the deficit to everybody else around you, approaching somebody else then becomes super intimidating. And so all too often, I think a lot of people kind of crawl back in their little hole and try to figure it out rather than just being confident enough to say, hey, I got a question. Like, how can we guide others to be more, how can we guide others in that kind of journey of approaching people, and where should they approach them?
Sure. So I think there's two sides to that, right? So let's start with you as a person that is being approached. As a speaker, as somebody that's like in front of a room of people, or somebody that's deemed the expert on this particular topic, whatever that happens to be. Just know that people are going to come to you. Just know people are going to email you, they're going to tweet you, they're going to send you DMs, whatever the case is. And so, being who you are in your area of expertise, you need to be open to at least listening, right? Because I think that's the first thing we have to do. Like, we have to listen to each other and understand where the problem is. Even if you can't solve the problem, like, it helps to just listen, because that's really happening. And like, what are some of the things that we really need to do to not only solve that problem, but again, just kind of help us all move forward. The way I always look at it is like, this field is very much of a group learn type thing, right? Like, there's definitely, you can't be in computer science, you can't be in technology by yourself. It's never going to work out. So regardless of whether you're mentoring or being the mentee, like, we definitely need to learn how to listen. Now, on the other side of things, let's say, I don't know, you're a student or you're a young developer or whatever the case is. So the first thing you need to do is, well, first you need to get out, right? Like, I think that's definitely the first thing you should do. Get out and find out where people that are talking about the things that you want to talk about, or, sharing that type of information are, and just kind of just be around for a little bit. And it's okay to just be around and not say anything for a little while, because, not everybody's super extroverted. Not everybody is like, and if you're that type of person, it's okay. Take whatever time you need to get comfortable in the environment. Like, one of the things I do, like, I like to go to conferences before I speak at conferences. You know what I mean? So, like, I'll go to a conference once. Like, I see what it's like. I see what the organizer is like. I see what the energy is like in that area.
Sure.
And then the following year, I'll submit to speak there. Because I understand what I'm getting myself into. You know what I mean? You can take a very similar approach, right? Like, if you, I don't know, let's say you're giving a talk, like, somebody could come and sit down and listen, or watch one of your videos, or read some of your blog posts to kind of understand, what are some of the things that you're interested in and you're talking about. And then, once you muster up the courage, at some point you got to muster up the courage, right? Like, you can't listen all the time. But at some point you got to muster up that courage and be like, hey, I've been working with this thing and I really need some help. Or even just saying, hey, do you mind taking a look at this section of code with me? I've been trying these different things and, I really can't get it. So I think two things are important. Like, one, you have to show that you've made the attempt to try.
Yes.
I think that's very important. Like, don't come ask me, could you do my homework for me, please? I don't understand it, kind of thing. Definitely make the attempt first, and then let's talk about some of the things that you tried and why they didn't work. You know what I mean? Because in trying to, that's also a learning experience for you. But for me, it also shows me that you're serious, right? And you're not just, trying to get me to do your work for you. And then also, too, just understand that sometimes people are going to tell you no, but that doesn't mean that you should stop asking other folks. Because, again, you got to remember, like, we're all people, right? Your lifestyle and my style is not the same. Like, your family situation and mine is not the same. Your work hours and mine are not the same. So I generally might not have time. Doesn't mean I don't want to help you. It just means that I'm not in a position to do that right now. So when people hear that, like, don't get discouraged and be like, oh, these folks are not what I thought they were going to be. I'm going to fall back and go back in my shell, right? Just be like, okay, thank you. I appreciate it. See you at the next event, whatever. Do you know anybody that might be able to help me with this? Because I really want to try and learn and understand. And those are totally acceptable questions that you could ask.
I'll add, anytime you go to an event, or you go to a thing where there's a set of people, immediately when you walk in the door, you already have something in common with everybody there. Like everybody who stepped in took the same step that you did. You're all there for a common reason, that is for that event, right? And so you then take another step, right? You go to a session or whatever, and everybody who's in that room is already united on one core thing, which is either the person who's speaking or the topic at hand. And so everybody who sits around you you already have an immediate interest, a similar interest in. And so there's a whole community of people, of some people who know it, some people who don't know it, some people are exactly the same position you're in. And often when I explain that to folks, they feel like, I never really thought about it like that. I walked into a room full of 100 people. That 100 people, y'all are already have something in common. You showed up to the same thing. Say hi to the person next to you and ask a question and be all right with it.
And I think that's a good point too. Like sometimes the person that you think you're gonna get help from is not the person you're gonna get help from, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's not the guy that's in front of the room or the teacher or whatever. Sometimes it's just the person that's right next to you.
Yeah.
And in you asking questions, what I've noticed is that if one person asks a question, like the other people in the room feel more empowered to ask more questions.
Yeah, totally.
Just that somebody just has to do it first.
Yeah.
And then a lot of interesting conversations can come from just people that are sitting in the room together.
Yeah.
Because you might be like, oh, hey, you asked the Node.js question. Oh, okay. Yeah. I've been doing that for like 10 years. Let me show you some stuff that I have here on my computer. And I've seen that happen so many times. But again, it's just, a person that happens to be sitting on the third row in the front.
That's right. That's right.
It just, it just ends up being random conversation.
That's right. All right. Before I get to the last question, and we've certainly gone over, but it's been such a fantastic conversation. I can't stop. And I appreciate everybody who's asked questions online too. But before we go any further, I want to send a bit of gratitude towards you. I know that you've been to that conference before. You're super active. You got your own podcast. You're putting it out there. And from everybody who consumes stuff like that, just thank you. Thank you for sharing your excitement in craft. Thank you for being here today. This is all about, telling the softer side of things, and thank you for doing that. I appreciate it.
Oh, appreciate it. Thank you.
I guess my last question for you, and it's becoming a bit of a theme for everybody that we talk to, is,
Sure.
What would be your piece of advice for anybody who's listening?
Sure. So if you're a young developer and you're really interested in just getting involved, making this a career for yourselves, again, like find a community. And you know what? I'll even go as far as to say is if there's not enough people around you think that are talking about stuff, build your own community.
Yeah.
And this doesn't have to be something super formal. It could just be, you and 4 people at Starbucks or a coffee shop or something like that. But just make time for yourself, to invest in yourself, to experiment, to read and to learn. Because again, like those things that you do, like those are the things that are really going to help push you forward. I can't tell you how many times like I'll just, file a new project, right? I write like 5 lines of code. Okay, that's how it worked, and I throw it away.
Yeah.
Only because I just wanted to test out something really quickly. I just wanted to prototype it. But versus, if you sit down and you read a book and you're like, okay, I'm reading, but you never actually do anything with it. If you never actually like put some elbow grease behind it, right, and actually try it out, that's never going to commit to long-term memory, right? And you're obviously going to forget that very often.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not saying don't read, obviously, but
make
sure that you. But do read, but also make sure that you supplement that with actually experimenting with things, and then again, share that with other people. Create a GitHub account. Create a YouTube channel. One of the things that I'm thinking about doing now is I'm thinking about creating a live stream on like Mixer or Twitch or something like that to do some live coding with some folks. I think that might be an interesting way for people to kind of just get in live and do live questions and live coding and some of those types of things. So just do stuff. And honestly, I mean, there's a lot of benefits from that because, again, people see you. Employers see that. Employers see you going above and beyond. And, people that care get hired. Let's leave it at that. Like, if we see that you care and you're doing it without the paycheck, like I can only imagine what you're gonna do when you have like a little bit more motivation. So, so again, definitely just make time for yourself to invest in yourself and to continue to improve. Find the one thing that you want to do. Like, don't try and read all the books of all the things.
Yep.
If you want to be a Node guy, find Node resources. If you want to be a Java guy or a .NET guy or I don't know, whatever else type person,
yep.
Just do that and focus on that and just get it done.
Yeah, I like it. Read and go do. Read and do. I echo that. I can't stress enough the doing portion of something is super, super important. I mean, if you want to take a corollary to something else, you could read all the books you want about welding, but until you've picked up a welding torch and you've actually tried to do it, it's just all theory, right? You got to actually apply it.
Yep.
All right. Well, with that, thank you everybody for joining. It's been a fantastic conversation. Make sure you leave some comments. This is a living thing. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all the ladies today who have made all of us better men. And with that, thank you for joining us, Cecil. It's been a fantastic conversation.
Thanks, man. It's been a pleasure.